So work I have been doing since I started my career was initially from sketches to drawings and then slowly moving and exploring different mediums. So I have started working on different kind of works, paintings to site installation works, and also the mural projects and the cartography. So I'm kind of like an artist, like who just really wanted to explore different kind of mediums and to see what sort of capacity and the possibilities that I have. So I think from the initially the work started to be more realistic kind of work, and then slowly I worked towards more into kind of like a very conceptual, I would say, and also very site specific works, and also what inspired me from the space itself. So I think the works kind of like a started to kind of evolve from the beginning to like what I've been working at the moment. So if I want to talk about the last solo exhibition, it's something very much like confined. What inspires me about my space and what is really about to being inside the house and looking at the objects and everything. But if you like look at the works that I've been producing before that, it was always the outside world, the inspirations coming from outside. So just kind of the practices just keep changing. It depends on my mood and the work and the space that what brings me there. So that's how I work. When I think about the theme, I don't really work as a team, but somehow my work sort of connects to one to another. I always see like when I look at my works back and kind of to see like there are like so many connecting dots. So when I start the portrait, it's also about the area, the way I'm coming from. But when I look at the mural project, then I also see the connection. I'm doing the same thing, but in a really a different form. Like it's comes out like a different media, or like the way the visual is something changed. But I always feel like there's some sort of connection. So, and even when I look about, I'm like really like into wildlife and the ecology. So when I look about that also, like I produce these works to think about how this human interaction with the world sort of like brings these kind of changes to the natural world. So when I think about that also, like the work I produced long ago, sort of like I started to see that happening during the COVID time, like how this nature is like taking over the cities, and how I always feel like this we kind of introducing this wildlife to our new environment, and how they sort of adapt to these new spaces, how they become part of their space, and how they find their home within these surroundings and stuff like that. So I was kind of like always working on that kind of animals, and I use these animals as a vehicle to talk about my emotions and about my how I talk about certain issues, the social issues, or maybe like what's really happening. And it's not maybe like on a really large scale theme, but maybe it's on very personal perspective, I would say. When I'm thinking about the work I did for my solo exhibition last year, I would say like mostly I use these kind of animals to talk about something else that's happening around the world, but maybe like when it comes to that series, I actually start talking about my emotions and how I feel about the space. So that work I produce, like a very much like I feel the work I produced during that time is like a very different approach I made, because usually when I work on something, I just look into references and I just like to think about like the research part. And so this sort of like work started to happen like within that space, and I didn't realize like how the visual was like a small part of the work, but more I spend and think about it, and that became the work itself. So I think during that time I kind of like worked on this series of birds, and also not really showing the birds, but it's very much like a very empty silhouette of the birds. But then it still kind of like explored my emotions and art to explain like feelings and sort of thing, and something that really resonate with everyone during that time. I think the mostly the things I draw is something that I always see, like everything that I kind of experience with or something like that. So mostly I draw parrots, because the parrots that I always grew up with parrots. So it's like not like even like looking at the reference images when I draw. It's just like maybe because I'm mostly with the birds and I know how they move their body, and how they just know how to tuck their wings. And maybe they even looking at the feathers, I just can't see like if it's a tail feather, or is it the wing, or is it the flight wing, so sort of thing. So I kind of like really understand that part. I think it's very important for me, I feel, rather than just like looking at a reference and just working. I feel more connected when I work with these kind of birds that I had. So during the series I was working for enclosed, I kind of get to see the birds behavior, and because these are the things I've been looking after it for a really long time, and that came into this art piece. So I've been looking at, like, like looking at this even little things like feathers on the cages, how the bird sort of reacts to when they are stressed, or like, how do you identify like if a bird it's not okay, or if they are like happy, like you kind of understand that the body language too, the way the posture, the way they are looking at you. So even these eyes, and then I kind of started to kind of understand that, and maybe because I grew up with all this bird, so I just like naturally came to me, like, so that's another thing, another part of this drawing life, like, it's more like a still life drawing. But at the same time, if you look at like most of these artists who draw birds, it's like they actually visit this kind of bird sightseeing, and they just sit there and draw. But for me it's a different part of thing, because I grew up in a very city place, and I'm a city guy. So I kind of look at these birds mostly in the cages, and and in the zoo or whatever. So I kind of only see these birds like constantly, like these are the city birds that I see. I sort of like understand that part. So for me, like to move to somewhere like, really remote and look at that, studying that within a short period would be like maybe not my thing. But maybe because I don't know, I'm just really kind of didn't explore that part. But so it naturally like came to me because I kind of understand the bird really well. I feel like I'm very much connected, and I also see myself as a reflection on that too. So it's also like some of the things that we can even relate it, like how human body also react to that certain things. For example, like how we are stressed and we start to shred our hair, and like I see the same thing with the parrots, and they just pluck their feathers just like we bite nails. So I kind of see these kind of little things, how it's related to like me as a person, and also how it's just like really actually reflecting myself in the birds. So that's how it kind of really easy for me to like work on the birds, and I feel like I'm really like one of those birds. When I actually like got to know, like, to kind of like get approached to work with Lunuganga, I was very much excited about it, because I've been looking at these imageries, and because it's unfortunately I just this is the first time, the second time actually visiting to Lunuganga. So for me, like looking at these things, I always feel like it's the place to kind of inspiration, but also to kind of grew up in the city, and like to kind of really stay somewhere, and how what sort of things will inspire kind of thing. And also I like really much about this space is like how you are actually like exploring, like this is a place for is testing things, right? For example, one of these things that I saw on the tour was the chicken coop, and that's the exactly thing that I would do for my pet, like, because I'm a person like really wanted to do something for my pet. I want to do like these crazy ideas to come to life, sort of thing. So I really see that, like when I see that I get excited, because there are so many things to explore, but the first thing strike me was that. So for me, like to look at this landscape also sort of like not really like kind of becoming very alienated, but also it sort of blends with the nature. You don't see like, how it was actually like really causing this kind of like a tension, or you feel like the nature is also taking over the buildings, and it sort of blends with that, which I like about it. Because I also, even though living in Colombo, like in a really small space, I just want to bring this nature into my living room. So I see those kind of thing, like, and also what I see from the trust itself also very interesting, from how these objects, little things about this lamp too, like all these objects kind of tells a story. So this is the exact thing I kind of see from my work on 2020. During the enclosed series, I started to sit at my home, like look at these objects and the furnitures, to see what story it could hold. Maybe it's a very personal kind of a narrative, but when I see this as a large scale, so this is exactly, I sort of like kind of connection was there. I feel like some sort of connected to that. And also walking around this thing, looking at like different plants and the trees, I kind of feel like, this is also like works as in my head. I have this very imaginary maps working on, because I always work on the maps, working in my neighborhood, like, things that's not there anymore. But I have like these oral histories, how it sort of like creates this psychogeographic map within my head. So I kind of see that also. Like I kind of really, I came to Lunuganga like to keep like very kind of open book, sketchbook. I want to start from this point. I just really wanted to kind of see what I can take, not just to come to this place with already like an idea, but to keep it very open. And I'm gonna see like what's gonna happen to through this week, and and also the later So this will evolve. I think maybe even the project that I could come up with now will be not the end product. So in that way, I just want to keep it very open, and to take whatever that is now at the moment, and just to keep in my mind very open and absorb everything that's there and start from that. So this would be the first step, I guess.